Hello, my name's Joe Lowe from Mavers UK. I'm joined today by Callum Dicks.
Hello everybody.
And what we'd like to talk to you about today is pole floats. Now, as the years have gone on and commercial fisheries have developed and evolved, everything has changed, purely and simply down to the size of the fish. Now, we all cast our mind back 10, 12, 14 years ago when commercials were first thought of and launched. A big carp was probably £2, £3.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Now, we all know that things have changed. A big carp now is probably £20.
Definitely.
And these are match-sized fish nowadays. Now, everything has moved on, tackle-wise, relative to the size. Agreed?
Definitely.
I mean, Mavers have moved with the times. We brought out Invincible poles, designed with big fish in mind. Obviously, line diameters and strengths have increased. Hook strengths have increased. Now, the only thing that's not really moved on over the years is something as basic as a pole float, and you might think to yourselves, well, what difference does a pole float make? Well, the big difference is if you're catching and you're catching well and you trash a rig because the side eye's pulled out or the tip's pulled out, how awkward and difficult is it to actually start catching again as quickly as you need to, even if you use an identical rig? It's not straightforward.
Yeah, no, it's very, very difficult. Yeah.
Correct. Now, with this in mind, we spoke to Callum some time ago, Callum, with a view to obviously developing a range of floats to cater for the growth of commercial carp. Now, I'm going to pass you over to Callum. Callum has had a lot of input into the design of these floats, the composite parts, the usages, everything else. So if Callum, you'd like to talk us through the Invincible pole range.
Yeah, sure. I'll start off with the Invincible 1. This float's got a thick carbon stem. It's got a buoyant hollow bristle. It's got a spring eye on it, also with the line going through the middle of the body. And the benefits of this is that, just like Joe said before, in matches at Lyford like here today, you're going to need in excess of £200 to win the matches. Now, the last thing you want is to lose a fish and for your float explode. Normally, the most common thing that happens to pole floats is the eye pulls at the side. So with these new spring eyes and the line going through the middle of the body of the float, it's exactly what it says. It makes it pretty invincible. So it's really unbreakable. So you can start your match with one float and end the match with one float. Now, the bristle is quite thick, it's hollow, it's very buoyant, so it's very, very visible. A thick carbon stem makes it very stable. Now, this design of float is designed for fishing with big baits, worms, corn, meat, any paste, anything like that in deeper water. The diamond shape to the body makes it very, very sturdy and very, very stable once you're in deeper water. Now, I'll just go on to Invincible 2. That's a very, very different float. Now, this float is designed, same principles through the one, the spring loaded eye, the line through the middle of the body, buoyant bristle, hollow bristle, a carbon stem. And this is designed for fishing down the edge in shallow water with big baits again, worms, meat, corn, paste, stuff like that, but in a shallower water. It's got a rounded body, so it's very, very stable, and a nice short, thick bristle, so it's very, very visible, but still very stable. Invincible 3, and this is a lot longer float than the 2. It's got a very, very long bristle, a long stem, same again, line through the middle, spring-loaded eye. Now, this is designed for mainly paste fishing, when you're not using too much shot down the line. In deeper water, you can use it in shallower water as well, but it is quite a long float, so it works very well in deep water. It's very, very slim. As you know, with paste fishing, the bites can be very, very quick and hard to hit. So the long, slim float makes it stable and perfect for paste. Now, the Invincible 4 is a total different float altogether. Now, this is actually a dibber float. Now, this is designed for fishing up in the water, shallow, or even in the margins, with slightly smaller baits, mainly fishing for shallow. But this one hasn't got an eye on it as such. The line just goes straight through the top of the float, straight out another hole in the bottom towards the bottom of the body. Now, this is very, very important when you're fishing shallow, because what actually happens is when you're fishing shallow, when you net your fish, your float's actually in your landing net. So what can happen quite often is the side eye can pull out, similar to the rest of them. Now, when I used to fish matches, I used to set 3 or 4 different floats up, just because I knew when I was catching, the eye was going to pull out eventually. There was no way of avoiding it with eyes. Now, this float is, you can start the match with this float and you can end the match with this float. Absolutely perfect. Nice and short, so you can fish really, really shallow if needed. Now the Invincible 5 does a similar job to the Invincible 4. It's actually got a hole right on the top of the bristle, another hole in the bottom of the bristle, and then 2 holes in the body. Just keeps it very, very in line. This float is designed for fishing shallow, similar to the Invincible 4, the Diver float, but fishing a little bit deeper. Say those days when it's not too hot and bright and sunny like today, you're fishing maybe 2.5, 3, 4 foot deep with decent baits again. It's absolutely perfect for it. The way the line goes through the bristle and through the body keeps it very in line, so you can fish on the drop with it. It's also a hollow bristle again, so it's very, very visible when the light's not quite right. A really useful float that is, especially in the winter months when they don't come up right into the surface layers.
So there would be nothing to actually stop you, Callum, using that as a margin float as well,
No,
would
definitely
there?
not. No,
So
definitely
it lends
not.
itself to a couple of different purposes.
Some of the days where, like I said before, when you're fishing shallow and don't come up, same down the edge. Some days they won't come up into 18 inches, 2 foot of water. You have to fish slightly out from the bank, maybe in 3.5, 4 foot of water.
Yeah.
This float again is very, very good for that. The way the line goes through the bristle and the body, what actually happens, a line comes off the top of the float. Now this keeps the line off the water. Just very, very useful. It makes quite. It doesn't seem like it'll make a lot of difference, but when you're getting fast bites, it can make a big difference. You're a lot quicker and more efficient. Right, Invincible 6. Now this is probably one of the most useful floats you can get. It's a real slim body, buoyant bristle, hollow again, and with an eye. Now I would use that fishing on the bottom with any bait, especially in the winter when the bites are very hard to hit. You can fish this on the drop because it's a slim body. The main use I would use for it is probably pellets. It's got, like I said, quite a thick hollow bristle, so you can see it when the light's quite difficult. But when you're fishing with pellets, the bites can be very hard to hit, especially in the winter months. So this slim type on the drop float is very, very useful.
The one thing you just said that I found interesting, to be honest with you, about the bristle, and I know we keep referring to my failing eyesight, what I do find with these hollow bristles is they're almost translucent.
Yeah, that's
and
right,
when the sun is shining, it just makes that visibility that little bit much clearer than it would be with a solid bristle.
The actual line passes through the bristle of the float rather than hitting it and creating a shadow.
Understood.
Passes through it, shines up. So when you get the light right, it really can shine up like a lighthouse. Now Invincible 7, it's quite a similar float. Not quite as slim, so it's slightly better in slightly more windier conditions. It is quite slim at the top, but it does get a bit fatter at the end. Same again, pellets, meat, corn. Especially in the winter, this float would be very, very nice. It's really an all-round float. You can use it for any bait, any circumstances when the water's quite shallow. I don't like using them too much when it's really, really windy. I prefer a more rounded float, which I'll go on to. But this is a really useful float again. Now the Invincible 8, and that is a really useful float in shallow water. You can fish any bait. You can fish paste, you can fish meat, you can fish worms. Now that is my ideal margin float for any type of commercial fishing, and even on rivers and canals when you're fishing for big fish with big baits. That, if you're going to fish in shallow water, that is the perfect float. Same again, hollow bristle, eye, line through the middle. Really, really nice float, and that will be the one I've got set up in my box the most. All my margin fishing will be done with that float. Now the last float in the range is the Invincible 9. Now this float is designed for fishing in deep water with heavy baits. Say you're going today, like on Larford Specimen Lake today, if you're going to be fishing with big pellets, meat, in 12, 14, even 15 foot of water, that's the float for it. It's very, very stable. Very, very visible. Again, it's just an all-round perfect big bait, deep water float.
Callum, thank you very much indeed. I think what we've basically tried to say today is that pole floats, the old adage is, floats catch more fishermen than they do fish. True if the design of the float and the composite materials haven't been thought out correctly. Now, a lot of forethought by Callum and by a number of our other sponsored anglers have gone into this, into the design, development and testing. So I hope we've made things a little clearer to you today as to how and why these floats should be used. Should you want any further information, you want to recap on any of this, please visit the website. Any questions, please email us at info@maver.co.uk. The details will follow on the end of this clip. Thanks again.